Hello there, my name is Sarah Wakefield and I'm a AAA tutor at First Intuition, and I'm here today to give you some top tips on how to turn your AAA score from a marginal fail into a pass. So let's get started then with my first top tip. You knew it would be in there somewhere. It is manage your time well in the exam. So not all marks in the AAA paper are created equal. As you'll know, the risk requirements in the case study take a lot longer because of all of the reading and planning time. So my tip here would be to assume that it's a 3-hour exam, so 1.8 minutes per mark, and then give yourself the extra time to do these requirements. If you still tend to overrun, you don't have to do them first, so you could consider starting with question 2 or 3, or even a standalone part of question 1, but play around with it when you do a mock. Don't try something radically different on the day. Use the mark allocation in questions to guide you in terms of how much to write. So for example, a 6-mark requirement is generally 6 well-explained points, but remember, for the risk requirements, it will be 2 or 3 marks per risk, so we need fewer points, but greater depth. Remember that the best answers are not always the longest ones, so do invest a bit of time up front, reading and planning, so that you produce a focused answer. That leads me on quite nicely to tip number 2, which is to make sure you address the requirement. So copy and paste it into the word processing response area and keep referring back to it. Avoid answering the question you wish you'd been asked and answer the question that you were asked. So for example, if you were asked to discuss risks, then don't spend time talking about how those risks should be mitigated. Follow any instructions in the requirement. So for example, the benchmark for calculating materiality or specific issues not to look at. Pay attention to the examiner's verb. So for example, the verb evaluate requires a much more in-depth answer than the verb outline or recommend. And be guided by the volume of information in the scenario when deciding which issues to focus on. On to tip number 3, which is to use the scenario. Everything is in there for a reason, so as you read through it, ask yourself, why is the examiner telling me this? Use names, facts and figures from the scenario in your answer. Be skeptical about what the client is telling you, and avoid putting in generic or rote learn points. Your answers must be specific to this client. So for example, when writing about audit procedures, think about what type of documentation might be available if you're given any hints in the scenario. On to tip number 4, which is to explain your points properly. There won't be credit for just repeating information from the scenario, so you need to make sure you write enough to add value and pick up the marks, which is particularly the case in the risk questions. Think about if you could write one more sentence to describe any further impact on the business or the financial statements. In ethics questions, make sure you explain clearly why a threat is present, even if it seems obvious to you. In reporting questions, state whether something is pervasive or not and what changes will need to be made to the wording of the auditor's report. Take the examiner through your thought process rather than diving straight in at the end. Then my final tip is to make sure you pick up all of the easy-ish marks in the exam. So for example, in question 1, you will earn communication skills marks for having the right structure and format in your briefing notes. Take a look at the model solutions in the practice platform and make sure your briefing notes look like these ones. There are also some easier marks available for materiality. So for example, in question 1, there are 3 marks for calculating the upper and lower range, and then selecting and justifying a threshold within that range. There's no correct answer provided you say something sensible and relevant to the scenario. So there you go, there's my 5 top tips. Hopefully they're helpful and you can put them into practice in order to score a pass in your AAA exam.